also sharing some things that give us some hope in resolving these challenges that are ahead. And so I want to go ahead as we skip into the next part of today and get into our roundtable discussion. And I'd like to introduce Daniel Tobón, who will take us into that conversation today. Thank you all so much. I've had a pleasure moderating.
Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be here and be talking to you. These incredible presentations have given us it's been a lot of food for thought, and I really want to thank Sophia and Global Schools Forum and everyone here, because you've inspired us greatly to promote well-being in schools. And so in order to kickstart this roundtable discussion, I have great people with me today who are, incredible, have an incredible experience working and implementing well-being in school settings, and I will talk about them in a little bit. But it is really rich, and I see some of them coming up on the screen with the camera open, and so I would like them to turn on their cameras as I do a quick presentation of them, and I will present myself in a bit. But as you're seeing in the screen, we have the different profiles of the panelists who are joining us today, and just to give you a very brief presentation, we have on one hand, we have Azeema. She is a teacher. She loves working with teenagers, and she's been an English instructor specialist supporting teachers studying inclusive education. She has a great deal of experience working in the field with both teenagers and teachers, as you heard. I also present to you Mohini, and they'll have a chance to express a bit more of what they've done. But we also have Mohini from Mumbai, as well as Azeema is from Mumbai. She has a master's in genetics, who got into teaching accidentally. She's a fellow from Teach for India and is a founding teacher for I Teach Schools. She has an incredible experience, both personal, which relates a lot with what she's done in the field, creating a curriculum for social and emotional learning and creating mental health programs. And so really interesting that she's here. We also have Lina Moreno. She's a school principal in a great school in Colombia, where I'm from as well. And Lina will share some of her experience, leading and ensuring how we can install a culture for well-being in schools. We also have Maya Bridgman. She's a Canadian living in Dubai, and she works at this intersection between technology and neuroscience. She's the founder of Dubai AI Society, and doing incredible work closing the digital divide and also focusing a lot on mental health and well-being. And then last but not least, we have Elliott. Elliott is the founder of Utter Rubbish Limited. He's been awarded for the work that he's done, caring for the environment and also ensuring that we all have the education that is needed to ensure sustainability. And so really happy to have them here. And my name is Daniel Tobón. I am very delighted to be here. I am the founder of Wellbeing, and before we start, I wanted to tell you a bit of why I work on school well-being, which has a very good flow with what our colleagues have shared with us before in the previous presentations. And so really want to share with you quickly something that's very important to me. I have a couple of screens here, so it's taking me a little bit of time to share this, but I want to tell you that like I said, I'm the founder of Wellbeing, a social startup that works to improve the well-being of students, of teachers, and schools using standardized indicators. But this story relates really closely with my personal experience growing up. At one point, here we go. So, oh, sorry, this is in Spanish. I had it in English. Anyway, there's a little bit of a lapsus here, but what I wanted to share with you is that for me, going to school was a bit of a nightmare growing up. I had to experience many years of bullying because of a sexual orientation that I didn't know I had. I was an average student, academically speaking, and my biggest dream at that moment wasn't necessarily to become something or to study something later. I just wanted it all to end because it was really too difficult for me to be in school with and being, harassed all the time. My peers and my teachers were not the easiest to deal with. I remember my peers mocking me, calling me names, and making sounds every time I dared to raise my hand in class or speak up. And what made me feel worse was looking at my teachers and seeing how they didn't pay much attention to what was happening. And so they would look away or look up to the sky or to the roof just to, for me, as I understood it or interpreted it as, there's nothing important, happening here. So we'll just let it pass. And for me, it was very difficult because no one knew. My parents didn't know, my family didn't know, because I was I was feeling really embarrassed for what was happening. And what was happening really beneath that was a serious case of depression, which made me fear for my life at some point. Fortunately, the networks that I had and, the good thing that I finished high school and was able to enter the university put me in a different environment with a different network. And I was really able to get out of that situation and became a medical doctor. And after, going through medical school, I became obsessed with this idea of making sure that every child, adolescent, and person in the school setting are able to live a healthy, happy life full of opportunities. And that's why I founded wellbeing, where we are really trying to make measurable improvements in on school well-being, both at a systemic and individual levels, using data and technology to reach as many as we can. So that's why I am working on school well-being. And with that said, now that we have a little bit of more information of what each of our panelists do from a professional perspective, all their accomplishments, I would like to ask them if you can tell us and share with us a brief anecdote of why you do what you do. I genuinely want to know how school well-being connects with your personal life. So if you could share with us a small story that can give us a clear understanding of why you're so passionate for this. So I ask you to be very concrete because we'll have other things to dive into. And so I'm going to go first with Elliott.
Thank you, Daniel. So actually, I had a similar situation when I was younger. I felt incredibly isolated. And for me, it was actually going outside, exploring the natural environment, going on lots of hikes, actually supporting me with my well-being. And based on that, I thought, well, actually, why not do things to support others that are going through something similar? So that's why it kind of leapfrogged into the environmental projects, which I presume I'll be talking about later. But it was about the natural environment and how that can positively change one's mental well-being.
Thank you so much, Elliott, for sharing with us that story. It really does connect a lot when we talk and speak from our hearts. Thank you so much. Azeema, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So for me, I think it was a mixture of my experience, my brother's experience, and the students when I started. So I started teaching when I was teaching in shelter homes. I was volunteering. And just seeing this amalgamation of just how much it's important to take care of our emotions, the people that we're teaching, the people around us, the family. I think it's just when I started sort of delving into it for myself and the people around me, is when I really realized that learning meaningfully, whether it's academic, non-academic, does not happen till we're healthy, emotionally, mentally, physically. And I think that is where all of this sort of stems from for me.
Thank you so much, Azeema. Thank you, really. And so should we go ahead with Maya?
Sorry. Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk today. And similarly for me, it kind of the root of why I do what I do is from a sense of isolation as well. I have quite an interdisciplinary academic passion between AI and sort of technology and neuroscience. And in my school, that was seen as like a bizarre combination. I was the only girl in my computer science class, and that was quite isolating for me in a lot of situations. And I actually had some younger girls from my school approach me one day, and they were saying that they were interested in AI. They didn't really know what that entailed, but that it was too daunting for them to start out. They didn't know what they were doing. They felt that they weren't more intelligent enough. And I actually started my organization as a small club at my school. I didn't expect anyone to show up, and actually it was shot down 2 or 3 times because there was really some pushback from starting this up. And then to my surprise, there were several hundred students who showed up to the first meeting. It was actually the largest turnout of a club in my school's history. And I was shocked and really inspired by just how passionate kids as young as 12 years old are, and how they have been left out in the narrative, and they do want to learn about technology. And I also found from speaking with students and from my own personal experience that in order to promote intellectual vitality and curiosity and expression, I think a healthy mindset and a being in a good place mentally is essential. Otherwise, there's no place for intellectual exploration.
Thank you so much, Maya, about that, because yes, both are really intertwined, and cognitive development and academic performance and success is also a central part of well-being. It's not only, it's interesting to understand that well-being, it's a comprehensive, integral thing. And you definitely need some of these skills, for example, learning about technology in order to, have opportunities in life, not only, being in a good place mentally and emotionally, but also physically, cognitively, and materially as well. So thank you so much for that. Mohini, do you want to go ahead?
Yes. Good evening, everyone, or good morning, wherever you are. So I think for me, it started from my own house, looking at like a very gender specific well-being that was happening, where emotions were processed in very different ways according to the genders, where my brother was maybe not allowed to cry because of some reasons, but when the girls used to cry, it was very differently taken inside a household. And I think in general in Indian culture, when well-being or mental health is not very openly talked about, and it's like a taboo also in the families. And I think I wanted to explore it more and see that how can I actually explore that with the kids, and how can it actually bring a change. And when I was in the classrooms for about 12 years, I actually did a lot of social emotional learning and other programs in the classroom to see that how particular emotions were affecting any outcomes that we see. So yeah, I think for me it just stemmed from my own family and also understanding my emotions personally. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mohini. Yeah, it's so important how to connect with not only with ourselves, but also the experience that we've had in our families. Thank you so much. And then last but not least, Lina, are you there?
I am. I don't see myself, so I hope that you see me.
No, we're not.
No.
We don't see you. We saw you before, but not anymore.
Okay. I have no idea. It's very strange because I see everyone on my camera is not blocked. But anyway, I'm so sorry for that. I don't know what's happening. Actually, what happened to me was basically that I had a very strong family. I think kind of like what you mentioned, Daniel, that even though you had a really hard time, um, at the end of the day, you ended up finding that strength in the people around you, right? The people that take care of you. And what I notice is that many kids, a lot of them do not have that, right? So then I realized that our school had to be that place. Like if you don't have that at home, if you don't have that in the community, at least I could make sure that at my school, they would find that support. They would find that safe place. And that's what really, and then as I learned more and I participated in more summits like this one, and I learned more about the actual research, and now being able to see it myself in my own school, little by little, this became more of a priority for me and for everyone around me. Thanks.
Lina, thank you so much. And if you can try at some point to turn on, maybe off and on your camera so that we have the opportunity to see it, that would be great. I think it's coming. No, I think there's something wrong. But anyways, Lina, now that you have your mic on, you all here have such a great deal of experience promoting well-being in schools and in the field. And I would really like it if we could leave the audience here with practical anecdotes and recommendations, maybe share experiences from initiatives that have worked and maybe some that have not. So Lina, now that you have your mic on and you just spoke, I would like to start with you. You're a school principal in Colombia, and I have a question here. Is that many of the schools and the principals that I work with, they seem to have a lot of competing interests, and it's no surprise. You have to answer for academic performance, but you also have to deal with administrative, financial, with dealing with the community, engaging with families, make sure that the student body and the teachers are well and trained and all of that. And so I wonder, how have you managed to promote and install a culture for well-being at your school, despite these competing interests and needs in the school? What has really helped you to ensure that this discourse and this culture is really embedded in everyone's mindset?
Okay, so we did have a university do a little bit of research at our school, and one of the things that they said was it definitely has a lot to do with the leaders. In this case, they felt like it had a lot to do with me. So what I would recommend is for the principals and the coordinators at schools to really believe the research, it's there. Once you know that that's priority, when you have competing ideas or all this stuff going on, you always go back to wellness is first. So you truly have to believe that if you have a safe school, if you have well-being for your teachers and students, definitely that's going to improve not only their happiness and everyone's happiness, but also their academics. So I think the first thing is to believe and make it a priority. And what do I mean by making it a priority? When we teach math, we make it a priority at our school. But do we really do that with social emotional learning? Or do we just, it's something that we do on the side? So one of the things that we did at our school is we actually have a cell class to make sure that it always happens, that it is a priority and that it's not just another class, but is one of the most important classes. The next thing I think is for a school to find a program that's right for their context, right? We chose C-Learning from Emory University because it actually gave us what we wanted. We wanted a 12-year curriculum, you know, just like you learn in math 1 + 1 and then you end up with trigonometry. We wanted the same for social emotional learning. And we also chose it because it includes mindfulness, trauma and resilience, peace education, ethics, and compassion. We even changed our purpose at our school to include the word compassion. I also think that you do have to gradually build it into the culture of the school. So it's not just the class of STEL, but little by little extending it to the teachers, to the accountant of the school, to the yard worker, or right, to the gardener. Everyone has to learn social emotional learning in the school so that we become a culture and we support it and we model that to the kids as well. And eventually reaching out to parents and even community members. That has to be done gradually. I think part of a program working very well is that no one feels exhausted, because you don't want to have a program to teach about wellness and then you introduce it in a way that's gonna stress everybody, right? That's totally that totally wouldn't work. So you want to make sure that you do it gradually, that you do it with love, with patience, and being mindful of everyone in your team, right? And then the last thing, I think, is being consistent, committed, being patient, you know, measuring to see every day how you can become a little bit better. But that's how you make something a priority, right? When you really focus, you believe, and you always go back to your purpose. And if your purpose has well-being and compassion, then it becomes your priority, and everything else is kind of the noise around it.
Thank you so much, Lina. And so you've shared very good practices in some general ideas, but also some good practices, like how do you believe and how do you create that purpose? And you say you put it in the sort of like in the strategic planning process, and you measure and evaluate, but also you put in the time and separate the time to, you know, put your sort of like they say, put your money where your mouth is. And so if you really say that it is your priority, then you need to put in the time to do it. Thank you so much, Lina, for sharing those insights. And now, Mohini, sort of what I'm seeing at Wellbeing, working with so many different schools, is that, you know, way too often leaders are burned out, and that, you know, that happens with school leaders, school principals, coordinators, but also with teachers and school staff. And that, of course, takes a toll on their personal well-being, but also it affects negatively the relationships that they build with other teachers, with peers, with students, with families. And I know you've experienced similar situations in your life. And so I was really wondering if you could share with us some ideas on how to improve and how to work to promote the mental well-being of school leaders, especially when they face so many challenges, they have so much time restrictions, and are under so much pressure.
Yes. First of all, we need to say that the school leaders are always under a lot of pressure to perform. Lina would agree to that. Like there is a lot of pressure to how the school will do academically, or like even if you say in any kind of things that are given to them. So it's a lot of pressure that is created for them. There are also certain flags that the teachers can see in the leaders when they are burnt out, right? And I'm going to like just say those flags also. Like, for example, there are these patterns of changing behavior where your school leader can get irritated with like very smaller things that are going around. They are basically a little bit rude to the kids as well as to the other teachers sometimes, and they do not have that space to fail or the space to fall onto different people, because they feel that everything that is supposed to happen in the school is because of me. There were certain structures that we have tried in some of the schools, like in this one of the schools that I have worked in, and these circles were called fearless voices. And in these small group of circles, there was no hierarchy of anybody. That means anybody who was stepping in was keeping their designation out of the like circle. Whether I'm a teacher, whether I'm a sweeper, whether I'm a gardener, whether I'm a cook of the school, I'm allowed to come in to this circle. And we used to talk about any kind of difficulty in our families, the emotions that we are going through, any difficulty that I am currently feeling in the context that I am in. And I think that gave everybody a lens of looking at school leaders not just as leaders but as human beings, as people, which we actually forget to see because of the hierarchy that we see on an everyday basis. And hence this structure actually helped us a lot, where everybody was keeping their designation off and coming inside to just share their emotions. The second thing that we actually practiced was a lot of care for each other in the culture, what Lina was talking about, that how we need the culture of the school to be. And I think the two practices that everybody did, including our school leaders and the teachers, and even it got like trickled down to our students, was basically showing a lot of care, but which needs a lot of courage, right? So care with courage, and also empathy with boundaries. Now, when we say empathy with boundaries, that converts into compassion. Otherwise, it's just like self-destruction to everybody. It's self-destruction to your own emotions. And these two were like the major pillars that we held on to. That if I am feeling very overwhelmed at a particular situation, I will step out and I will ask somebody to step in for me, because I am feeling very overwhelmed at that point of time. And I think we made those safe spaces for each other inside the school systems, because we were able to openly talk to each other about our problems, and hence the fearless voices actually helped us to build these two structures a lot. So yeah, these two are the things that we actually did, and which helped us a lot to build a structure where also this retention rate, what we talked about in the previous sessions, we were the only school where the retention rate was 100% because of the things that we were doing. And I think it makes a huge difference when you actually make efforts to understand your school leader, and school leader makes that space to understand the teachers, and hence how it trickle down also in the students and the culture that we are building for them. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mohini. And I just want to, before I'm going to ask you a kind of follow-up question, but just to invite everyone in the audience and panelists as well, if you have something to contribute to the conversations that we're having with each of you, please raise your hand. Please use the Q&A section if you want to ask anything. Just, Mohini, I really wanted to ask, how did you find the time to do that? Was it during school time or was it after hours? Because, I know a lot of us have tried to do stuff like this, and then during school time, then there's a lot of, competing demands and meetings and stuff. The agenda is difficult, but also after hours, it's, they're often too busy or they are not that interested. How did you find that time?
So I think we prioritized it. All the staff came in together. I think it was one of our professional development series that was happening, and we always used to talk about, okay, what to do in mathematics or what to do in science or what to do in English and everything. But I think we all came together and we said that, you know what, like there are a lot of emotional breakdowns that are happening and we need to do something about it. And I think when we said that, and everybody said that in one voice, we knew that we need to fix that first. So we shifted the whole thing into the professional development section that we had. We used to have 1 day in 2 weeks. So once in 2 weeks, we used to have these meetings where we used to sit together. And we prioritized it for about 2 months to make it like um, very strong. And after that we moved on to the professional development sessions, right? Because if our mental well-being is better, only then we'll be able to do the PDs that are coming in, and we'll be faster in doing that. Because we also saw that there is a drop in the sessions that we were doing with the teachers, and there was a drop in the interest that they were showing, and there was literally a problem that we saw, and then we were trying to ask them that what is it. So actually we prioritized it and did it for 2 months, and then we pushed everything back. So yeah.
And I see that because there was, you know, people were really suffering it. And so that's how, when something is really hurting, then you do prioritize, but you need to show evidence of the impact that this is having in people's lives, in productivity, in performance. And then, you know, based on that, you do. So that's why it's so important to have data and to systematize information, because it will allow you to show how important or why this is so important, and then prioritizing and giving it the time. Thank you so much, Mohini.
Yeah, Daniel, I just want to share one thing just before I go. Is that one when you talked about data, we do something called SWOT analysis with the
Mohini, sorry, because we have a very short amount of time. I'm going to ask you to keep that. Yeah. For the last part of this panel. We will give people very concrete advices, and I'll ask you to save that for the last. But we do want to give others the opportunity to also share and interact. So sorry about that. But so I wanted to ask Maya something, and it really, when we connected before, I found really interesting as an entrepreneur. And as an entrepreneur, but also in, creating a startup that is based on technology, I really understand the importance of making the best use of technology and also building the skills that children and adolescents need. I don't have the necessary skills, and it's really hard to find the talent and the people who have those skills. But also, as a medical doctor and as a healthcare professional or as a public health practitioner, I worry a lot about the excessive use of screens in the well-being and development of children. And I'm talking specifically on their physical well-being, their emotional and social well-being, not on the cognitive side of things. Of course, we cannot choose either or. But I was wondering, because you do have a lot of experience here, how do you harmonize these two things? Not only to build skills, but also to ensure that children and adolescents are well while doing so.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll keep this brief because I know we're short on time. But the primary way in which I view this, and it's a very fine line to walk, like you say, it's a difficult balance, and I think it's not very highly considered in education. It's very black and white right now, where it's either using technology and very much focusing on that, or avoiding technology and not using ChatGPT in schools and putting away devices during lessons. I think in my educational curriculum, which I developed, the primary foundation that we focus on is to teach students to take control of their technology and to gain a sense of autonomy there instead of letting the technology control the students. And so the best way to do that is to actually teach the students the psychology and the technicalities behind, or the foundational aspects behind how the technology works. So that is one of the foundational things that I teach in my AI education, is how does AI actually work and how can you utilize that in school? Because if you let students, especially when they're younger, run freely with technology, if they don't understand its interaction with us as humans and as a society, then it's very easy for them to use it as a way of slacking off or to have it be a distraction. But when you teach the students about how on Instagram, for example, or how your eye movements are tracked on social media and how that feeds into an algorithm which makes you addicted to social media in a lot of cases, then they can not only be better informed of their own use and kind of know what's going on, and they're less gullible, and it lets them actually take an active role, which I think works really well. In the actual classroom, active activities are the best way to integrate technology, because technology, I find in classrooms right now, it's very much students sitting down on a laptop, like looking at a Word document or going on a website, and that is a very passive way of using technology that it can make people distracted very easily. So what I use in my classes when I teach is to actually integrate technology. We do a lot of activities that involve AI, but I have the students stand up and I have them move around and work in groups, that there's a layer of separation between the technology and the actual learning. This not only works really well with short attention spans, but it's great for physical health, moving around in the classroom. It's good because it's an active learning tool, and it prevents a demonization of technology, because you instead are focusing on the social interactions with other students rather than what distractions you may find on the device that you're using. And there's this one really fun one that I'll briefly share. It's when students, they basically move their arms around to conduct a virtual orchestra using computer vision recognition, and it's just incredible how well that works and is integrated into classrooms. It's really spectacular.
Thank you so much, Maya, for sharing that. And it's like music to my ears, because recommendations usually say that at least 20% of all activities should involve physical activity. And so we've been sitting here for a little over 2 hours, so we should be standing up. I invite all of you to stand up right now and do a little bit of a stretch. If you can, do it. I know we're on screen, but try standing up and stretching a little bit. And this is not enough, but just to really emphasize the importance of physical activity, and physical well-being in the comprehensive development of not only children and adolescents, but all of us adults as well. And so thank you so much for sharing that. And before I move on to the other panelists, I wanted to take the opportunity of a question that someone asked, and maybe Lina and Maya could, whoever wants, can give us your opinions of this. Is how have parents received the introduction of, for example, in Lina's case, the social and emotional learning curriculum, and in your case, technology and AI? How have families received this, and has this improved in any way the relationship that you have with families or their engagement? Whoever wants to go. It doesn't have to be only Lina or Maya. It can be anyone here who wants to chime in.
I can speak a little bit to that point. I think that with a lot of the parents that I've interacted with, there is a degree of fear when it comes to technology, because a very common misconception, because it's a common pitfall of using technology in the classroom, is when it's improperly used. That's right now, a lot of the integration isn't as smooth as it could be. And so that's causing distraction in classrooms, and it's causing children to not be as engaged with their learning as they can be. I think that when I properly speak to the parents that I talk to about this, and I give them the research and the literature that I've looked at, and I explain specifically how technology can be used to integrate active learning into the classrooms, they fully understand and support this, and support technology as an aid to improve and enhance our learning. But I think it's the lack of information which causes fear. It's the uncertainty, and that causes a demonization of technology in education.
Thank you so much, Maya. And so, because we're really short on time, I'll give Lina the chance later to give us her opinion. And so I wanted to ask Elliott. And Elliott, you talked about your experience and how difficult that is, and I relate a lot. Like I said, being there in an environment that seems to be unhealthy or unsupportive, it's difficult. Really, there's a lot of barriers for you to go on and explore, those initiatives that you want to lead on or to start or to initiate. And so I was wondering if you could share with us some of the barriers that you faced while creating this initiative that you created, and what would you think would be good practices in schools to promote self-care, so that leaders like you and like me and like others have the space and the opportunity to take care of themselves, and with that also have the opportunity to care for others and care for the environment.
Definitely, I think there's lots of challenges and barriers that we face in society nowadays. There's lots of barriers that we've encountered about resources, and that includes time. Actually, students and staff have incredible time pressures now in order to turn around initiatives and meet deadlines. That's one of the ones that we found one of the most demanding to meet. But actually, the one that really sticks out to me is actually around the student voice and empowering students with their ideas. I think lots of the time we have really fantastic initiatives, but they're more or less imposed on students, and it doesn't have the best uptake as it possibly could. So I think one of the best things is actually to look into student staff co-design, where my students are brought in at the very start. And actually linking into the project that you're referring to, if we take one step back, we actually co-designed something called the Global Challenge Pathways, and as a part of that, we had different areas that were explored by students and staff. We sat down together, we looked at things like global health, the environment and sustainability, social justice. We had one about creativity and entrepreneurship, languages and cultures, and how we could look at incorporating wellbeing in an interdisciplinary way across the curriculum. And that was something that turned out to be actually really successful, had a really high uptake from students. It was something that was completely optional. They didn't have to participate in these classes. We saw, this has been running for a couple of years now, I've had thousands of students actually enroll on one of these different areas. They could do one or more. Most students did two actually, that enrolled. So it's about having that collaboration and that involvement from the student side, which is it is a challenge, but also where there's the greatest opportunity, and I think that's what we need to look at. But going back to the second part of your question around was around self-care. The second part of your question, I think that's incredibly important inside and outside the classroom. I think in terms of something that's benefited myself, and I think will benefit other people, is around setting goals and priorities actually. And I think through a gamified learning mechanism that can actually be really powerful. So I think from what Maya's not, I think she touched quite briefly on this from her experience as well actually. And in terms of looking at how we can structure the curriculum in a way that supports students the best, and from my experience, gamified learning is one of those ways. We can break down the units that students are being taught, and that they can see those wins as they progress through, and actually supports them and empowers them.
Thank you so much, Elliott, and I think you've given us a lot of food for thought and great connection actually to the next question, because and I would like all of your all of you to participate here, because when you talk about integrated into the curriculum and setting goals and standards, something that I'm really struggling a lot with lately, and which at wellbeing we've assessed over 5,000 schools in Colombia and Jamaica and other countries, and maybe Azeema, you can give us, you can shed some light here, and it's that there's a lot of evidence saying that these skills that we want to build for health and well-being, in comprehensively speaking, should be incorporated across the curriculum. And we're talking about not only social and emotional skills, but also, healthy habits. We're talking about the skills needed for a good sexuality education and gender equality. But many teachers, and I speak, and Lina said this before, say that this is very utopical, that if you don't separate the time as you do for math, for language, for science, then these teachings will never happen. So I wanted to ask your experience, Azeema, particularly on how we can really incorporate this into a curriculum. Should we go for one or the other, both? What do you suggest?
I think definitely when you look at it from big picture perspective, it is 100% fantasy land, right? That you're having all of it happen in the same class while academics. I think what you need to do is take a step back and sort of understand what does my classroom need right now. Take a first step, and then you can build on it. So, for example, in my last year of teaching, I did Pride Club, I did Identity and SEL integrated lesson plans and unit plans. I did accommodations in my lesson plans. I had an entirely new format of lesson planning, but I didn't start with that. That was after a lot of building up of years and years of taking the first step, right? So the first step that I ever started was in my first year of teaching was just understanding what my students need. And at that moment, because I've mostly taught high schoolers, I've always worked with teenagers, and I've worked with teenagers from underserved communities, from low-income backgrounds, right? The biggest need at the time was anger management, because I was having classroom fights break out in every class. So all I started with was breathing techniques, and that's all that we focused on. So I didn't start with an SEL integrated curriculum. I started with, hey, this is what my class needs. Let me start there. And slowly that sort of became a structure, right? Also reflecting on my own mental health really helped. So when I am really mad in class, what do the students see me do? Do they see me break down? Do they see me scream at them? Do they see me violently act out? What do they see in the class? They see me take a break. They see me go and have a drink of water. They see me needing to go and wash my face and come back and communicate it to them that, hey, listen, I'm getting really frustrated, I'm really angry. Okay, this is what I need to do. And that's what they then take back, that, okay, I'm frustrated. Maybe that's something that I need to do. So I think a lot of these smaller brain breaks in class, whether it's breathing strategies, a lot of reflective activities in class, especially because I teach literacy. And English is not the only language that our students learn in India. This is usually the second or third language. So they are learning almost 3 languages or 2 languages at the bare minimum in school as well. And that is after coming from major learning gaps in all the languages. Because if you look at spoken language versus formal language, big difference, right? So what does it take for me to get a lot of these SEL so-called practices into literacy? So we started with writing reflective pieces. So I do need to teach them grammar. So instead of just doing adjectives, I make them write praise for each other, where you are incorporating adjectives, you are praising each other. So there is this culture that you start to build of praising each other, of gratitude. And in the process, they're also learning language skills. There were a lot of other things. So when it comes to art, art and is a brilliant form of expression, right? So how do you also build that? So instead of teaching them physical traits or identify the physical traits and list them, we made finger puppets. We made drawings out of them. Instead of learning how to identify setting of story, we were painting the setting of the story. So there are so many ways to sort of bring all of this in. The first step is intention, awareness of yourself, and then you sort of build up from there. There were a lot of structures and systems that we put into place. So again, right, I knew that at the start of the class, I need to be centered. I need to switch contexts. I need to come back to my class. So one of the structures that we did was all my students used to form a line outside with their books. There used to be student leaders taking care of them. asking them just basic questions, right? What did we learn yesterday? Are you done with your homework? Do you have your books? And while this is taking like 5 minutes, my class is set up, my board is set up, I am prepped, my do now is on the board. So kids know that, okay, when I enter the class, we start full speed, right? So it was a way for me to center myself. It was a great way to get the students to context switch that, hey, okay, this is now this class. So when they come in, they're prepared. Another thing that we did was we had like post-it check-ins. So there used to be like a question, and these were like very generic questions, right? They don't always need to be very introspective, very deep. Simple questions like, if you had a superpower, what would it be and why? If you could be anybody for a day, who would it be? If you could have anybody for dinner, like, you know, those icebreaker questions that we have. It was a great way to get to know how the students are thinking. It's a great way to have a temp check of your class. It's a great way to have a base understanding of what do my students like? Where are they at? Because it was these questions which actually also told me about their music tastes, which we then sort of incorporated later into my class. So during practice time, we used to have music. So looking at, okay, what are some songs that most of the students are listening to, informed my playlist. So these are a lot of ways where it did not take too much extra time from my planning time and the amount of work that I have, but then these were also ways to practice their own skills. So they were expected to write in complete sentences. They were expected to write in certain ways. They were expected to use certain adjectives. They were given a certain word wall. So there were a lot of ways that, you know, you can integrate things. You touched upon sexuality, education. I think, again, right, with literacy so much, the text that you choose, the way that you introduce the text, the content and prereq, the background that you can build around the text. My school leader also pushed me to integrate grammar elements. So instead of just studying pronouns in isolation, we introspected on our own pronouns. And that is the way that you can integrate things without it being that, okay, this is another thing that we are going to do, and then there is this another thing, and then there's this third thing that we're going to do. All of this slowly starts melding into the same class the more you start practicing and the more you keep building consistency. Like the first time I tried the whole students walk out of the classroom, it took me 20 minutes to get them back. It took so much time for them to like come back and settle. But by the end of the second week, it was a 5-minute procedure. It was a thing that was set in class where I now did not have to give them any instruction. They knew that, okay, this is her class next, or this is their class next. And they were already doing it. So there are, and I think like one of the first things that you need to also do is start being vulnerable with your own kids. Start showing them that you are trusting them to hold a safe space for you, because especially with teenagers, the more responsibility you hand to them, they will show up. You hold them to high expectations and they will reciprocate the best that they can at the level that they can. So I slowly started coming out to my students. I slowly started talking to them about my struggles of having grown up, and not from a space of, oh, I have been through worse, what are you complaining about? It was more from, hey, these are struggles that I have been through and I am still going through. So I get it, like we all are struggling. Let's figure this out together. And I think these are the sort of first steps of building relationships with your kids, especially teenagers. It's very important. So I think like, yeah, I think relationships is the first way that you start building, and then getting to know them, integration sort of comes along the way.
Thank you so much, Azeema, for saying that. So if to summarize, what I would say is that you can do either or you can do both combined. You need in your school, you need to, strengthen these different abilities and different skills for all of the, all the student body, depending on their age. Then, it has to do a lot with the purpose and the philosophy and the core values that you have for your school, and that is not only concentrated in social and emotional, but it can also be what are the skills, also what are the conditions that children and students need to really thrive, and that could be social and emotional skills, but that could be IT and technology savvy, or they need to learn English because that's an ability that they're going to need in order to build the lives that they want. But it could be it could be in combination with something that I really enjoyed hearing from you, is that becoming aware. And so the teacher needs to be really aware and conscious of, what are the needs that they have in that specific classroom, not in the school in general. What does my classroom need? Are they fighting? How are they feeling? And then based on that, then you can incorporate in every class or in different classes all of those other skills that are more specific to your group in particular. And I really like that. Thank you so much for saying that. I think we need to finish now. And so I really wanted to have a space where you could share something really concrete and but I think throughout your presentations, we've really had the opportunity to learn really key practices, practical recommendations that the audience can go on and take. And because I'm taking a bit more of the time that we had, and we started a bit late, I'm going to thank you all for being here and for opening your hearts and sharing with us your stories and your experiences. And then I would like to then hand it over to Mr. Contestino.